Off Limits is the money podcast that blows up stereotypes, showing you that managing money doesn't have to be hard.
We want you to thrive, not only with your money, but in every part of your life.
What you will get out of this podcast is real, relatable, and relevant tips and strategies that you can apply today. Hi, I'm Donald Raymond, and this is
Christine Spiak. We are money coaches, business owners, and colleagues who are passionate about helping you become more of who you are. So if you're ready, join us.
Welcome back to Off Limits. It is November 1st. Today, Wednesday, it's Halloween season. Christine, did you do anything fun for Halloween?
Well, I handed out candy all night and I actually ran out. which
now,
is
wait,
a good
did you
thing.
hand it out or were you eating it?
No. I was going to say it's a good thing that we ended up handing it all out because I definitely do not need the leftovers, especially with our daughter away at college. My husband and I do not need to be eating a bunch of candy.
Do you guys live in a neighborhood where there's lots of trick-or-treaters?
Yes. Yeah. 50 maybe. I don't know
wow.
exactly how many came through, but maybe more. Because there were some groups that came up and there was like 10 kids on my, front step all at once. So
wow.
I would say maybe more.
That's awesome. So you got to see lots of costumes. Our neighborhood is much quieter. We actually went out and spent Halloween with a friend and walked through their neighborhood, and it was pretty calm. We went out kind of at dusk. As it got later on, you started to see more and more kids come out, so that was fun.
Oh, good. Well, here in upstate New York, it was very cold. So it was a lot of like coats under costumes or a lot of kids bundled up with their costumes,
underneath.
Over their layers.
Oh, over top. Okay,
yes,
even better.
That's what we get here in central New York. So we are accustomed to Halloween falling in any type of weather.
Well, down here in Georgia, we got our first exposure to the winter weather as well. I think the whole country experienced the beginning of winter. Several months ago, we talked about spring has sprung, so maybe now we should say winter is here. I think, I don't know if it's going to stay cold. It looks like it's probably going to turn back up a little bit, but I think the winter season is upon us.
It is.
Yeah.
And for those of us watching us on YouTube, I'm scratching my face.
Yeah, you made a bad face. I love the winter.
Winter is not my jam. But what I will tell you is that Halloween every year takes me back to when we bought our home because we closed on our home on October 12th back in 2011. So here we are in 2023. So 12 years later, 12
years.
Halloweens, happy memories, lots of fun times in our neighborhood. So it kind of kicks off this call today because we're talking about buying a home, and there's a lot that we can share as money coaches on this subject.
Yeah, today's episode is all about real estate, right? Getting in and getting out the right way and trying to follow a path, a plan to make sure that we're going to make informed decisions. And, while the market continues to change, and you and I have talked about this, it's and in coaching calls, there's never going to be a constant, I don't think, in really any of these categories. And real estate seems to be one of those things. Let's just call it what it is. The house is the number one biggest expense anybody's ever going to have, right? For most of us. There may be some exceptions, but for the majority of us, and I would say well over 90% of us, the home is going to be the most expensive thing we ever buy. And so you definitely don't want to make a quick decision, right? And knowing that this market continues to change, it just makes sense to have a few good, call it an action plan, a strategy, right? Or a philosophy toward how you approach it. If we're going in blind, we're going to make a mistake every now and then. We might get lucky, but we're going to make some mistakes. So that's the goal today, right? Is just to give a few good principles that people can use in any market, really. And a lot of these I don't think we're going to shock a lot of people with what we have to say today. I think a lot of people are going to be nodding their heads as they listen. I think they're going to agree, really with the foundational principles of what we're talking about here. But at the same time, I think it's a conversation worth having. The mortgage, the amount of mortgage that people take on, the way that people go into home ownership a lot of times comes up during our coaching calls. So we know that this is a difficult, topic and area for a lot of people, and we just want to try to help. So I think that's maybe for me anyway was the motivation behind today's episode.
Yeah. And I think with, anything, if I knew then what I know now, our decisions or our steps would be different to solving a problem, making a purchase, whatever it may be.
No doubt.
And for me, I really think home ownership falls into that category. For us, we've bought 2 homes. I know you said earlier to me before we started recording that you've owned 4 homes. So between the 2 of us, we have experience, we have our own individual experiences, and we have experiences helping clients. So hopefully the listeners today will take these action steps, as you call them, and help them to make well-informed decisions when they go to buy whether it's their first house or their next house. That's truly what this episode is geared towards.
Yeah, and I forgot to look it up. You just said first house. I heard, and I was gonna do a little fact checking. So I won't share the number. I'll just say the first time home buyer is experiencing prices that are, I mean, for me, I guess I'm middle aged now. They're staggering.
Mm,
When you and I think that would be true, for our folks, right? If I were to ask my dad what his cost was and what his dad's cost was for that first home, obviously it's going to be less. But I think we have gone through a season where costs, that entry level home has increased more percentage wise. And again, I don't want to share numbers because I didn't do my fact checking, so shame on me. But it seems like, or at least there is a perception that that first time home, that entry level home, has increased more as a percentage than entry level homes have historically. And
mhm.
so that barrier to entry is now even steeper. And what I don't want people to hear is, well, then, it's off the table. We can't go buy a home. That's not what we're saying.
No.
It might be a not now, right? And it certainly is, don't do it without a plan. But like you said, yeah, we've been in and out of 4 homes in the last 20 years, and 3 states, and we've moved from Virginia to Arkansas down to Georgia. Two of those homes were in Georgia, and then I've actually had 2 homes that were an investment property. We did a quick little
Mm,
turnaround flip during kind of coming out as things were recovering from the 2008 real estate crash, and values started to come back up. We had an opportunity, and I will tell you from experience that it's not the way it looks on HGTV, and that every investment is not going to pay off the way you think it will. We didn't
mm.
lose money, but we also didn't become real estate moguls. And obviously, here today, I'm not telling you that I heavily invest in real estate and flip 12 houses a month and stuff like that. That was it was just a test. It was a sample to see if it was something we wanted to get into. It worked. We got what we thought we would get out of that, but we certainly did not get what would have motivated us to continue down that road. I'll put it that way. So 2 more on top of the 4 that we've lived in, and no more investment properties, at least not for the foreseeable future. Not in that way.
Well, why don't we take all of our combined lessons learned and kick off the show with the steps that we're recommending today?
So the first thing we want to do, no matter what we're talking about, right? And we already said this is the biggest investment anybody's going to make. So the first thing we need to do is know where we are, right? And what we're calling that is we want to assess our financial situation. How much money do we have? How much of that money could be used toward potentially a mortgage payment? Obviously, the best advice is pay cash for your home. How many people are going to be able to do that, especially with their first home? I'm not going to say
Mhm.
it's impossible. It would take a tremendous amount of planning and effort to make sure that that happened. But knowing where you are is going to give you some parameters, right? These are boundaries, these are healthy boundaries. And beyond that, we want to know what our goals are as a homeowner, right? So take a little bit of time and establish, if you're single, do this for yourself, right? What are your goals? But then you want to have those trusted partners. So if you're in a relationship, this is easy, right? Talk it over with your spouse. Put a list together. What kind of home? How much space? What location? What's your job situation look like? What does your family dynamic look like? How are you going to use the home? These are all questions you want to answer. And so, putting all of that together, you can then establish what we are going to call a realistic budget, right? And
Mhm.
that can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people. But if we take our goals and our finances, our available resources, then we can create something that could be described as a realistic budget. And that's going to look, like I said, a little bit different for everybody. Christine, as you're talking to your clients, and you're having some of this conversation, maybe they already own a home, right? So this is not just for the first time home buyer. They're already in a home. Maybe they're looking at relocating and moving, buying a new home, upgrading, downgrading, or maybe they just don't think their home is a good investment. Maybe they bought it wrong, or maybe that comes out of the conversation. What kinds of structure and parameters and conversation are you having around that topic?
Well, certainly if they're a first-time home buyer, it's more than the home itself, but how they're going to use it, more than where is it going to be, what do they foresee their family needing it for?
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because a lot of times we think about the structure, but maybe not necessarily how our family dynamic is going to grow or
Mhm.
change, where we are now, where we think we're headed, even if we're single or married or with a partner that we're buying the home with. I know for my husband and I, when we bought our first home, he and I were both working, but we knew that we would be starting a family soon. And I really wanted to be a stay at home mom. We both
Mhm.
wanted that for our family. So we intentionally bought a home that we knew we would be able to afford on his income. So having that complete conversation will really help guide your decision. Because when you start looking and the realtor starts showing you, maybe this is a little outside of your price point, but we really wanted to show you because it's a great value or however, whatever spin they're putting on it, you have to be able to go back to what do we really need? What do we want? What's a nice to have? What's a must have? And if that's clearly defined at the onset, then it's a lot easier to just go through these homes and go through the process with, yes, this checks the box, or no, it doesn't. Instead of, wow, I love this. I love the pool. I love the neighborhood. I love the home. I love the kitchen. I really want it. Instead of falling into that trap.
So I think we're going to talk a little bit. Two things that stuck out, and then a third that I think we're going to go into later was what you were just describing. You know, you walk into a nice new home that's been staged. It's a new construction or new remodel, and it's just that wow factor, right? The realtor's selling it, and so you really do. You get that those rose colored glasses, right? And all of a sudden, you just have to have it because you didn't know something this good could exist, you know. And
Yep.
it's always that first experience. You're going to have good experiences when you go house shopping, right? When you start doing open houses and looking around and testing the waters in the market, but you definitely want to have your guard up too. You don't want to allow yourself to fall into that trap. You know, it's you will fall into buyer's remorse if you do that, and that's okay when you're at the retail store. But when you're buying a home, you do not want that to be your story. Um,
Absolutely. So now
but you
let's,
said two other things that I really just thought were super valuable, and I don't want us to get past them too fast. One of those things had to do with setting the goals, right, and having those parameters and those boundaries. And the way you framed it up, I think was perfect. You said wants versus needs. I think if I and you may have not
mhm.
have used those words, but that's what I heard. I heard wants versus needs, and so thinking about the now, but also trying to think about the future. How many times do you want to have to, you know, move in and out of a home, working your way up to the home that you eventually need versus taking your time, maybe renting for a while, figuring out what your needs are now. And if a rental makes sense, then you can potentially skip the first turnover, the first home that you would have bought just because you had a financial constraint,
Mhm.
but you actually needed a home that would meet your family dynamics needs and how you're going to live in that home better, and actually be better off financially, right? So you just want to, I'm not saying that that's going to be everybody's story, but I do think it's worth the conversation, right? You owe it to yourself to have that part of the conversation. So, absolutely, as the other piece in that same context of wants versus needs was when you said the realtor is going to tell you all the reasons why you can afford just a little bit more. And this is not a knock on realtors. This is their job, right?
Mhm.
They deal with buyers every single day. They know what the markets are allowing. They know the way mortgages are being structured. And so they're going to weigh in on that, right? They are going to offer their opinion. But at the end of the day, this is your purchase. It's your home. You're the ones that are going to live there, and it's your money. So this is
Exactly.
not
Exactly.
the realtor's money. It is not the realtor's decision. The job of the realtor is just to expose you to, hopefully, some available properties that meet those needs and those goals. So stick to your guns, right? Have the list. Go look at some properties that you know you can't afford, and let yourself respond that way. Walk into a $200 million home and say, this is way out of my league. This is beautiful, but I cannot afford this, and just train yourself to say no.
Yep.
Then go look at some more reasonable properties, and maybe you'll be in a little better headspace to be able to take it on. So we're going to dive into open houses and going out and house shopping a little bit later. But what's next on our as we're preparing, right? So now we've set some goals. We know how much money we have. Maybe part of that journey was looking at where our careers are going. You know, maybe we have an entry level job and we're up for a promotion, so maybe our income is going to change. Maybe we're going to change industries or careers, and so that's going to have an impact. It's going to go up, it's going to go down, but now we kind of set the table, right? We know where we are. What's next?
Well, now we have to start saving for the down payment.
So we're going to save
Saving.
money.
Yep. Yep. And if you don't know, if you don't put down a 20% deposit onto the home, then you have to pay something that is called PMI,
Mhm.
and it's something mortgage insurance. I'm forgetting what the P stands for right now, but and I know this because we did it when we bought our first house. We did not have 20% to put down, but we really wanted to get in a home and we didn't want to wait longer to save more money. So we paid the PMI until you reach that 20% of the principal. And then that insurance, that fee that you're paying every month goes away. And you're paying it because the mortgage company is saying, okay, if you couldn't put down 20% on this home, are you really going to be able to make the payments every month, keep up your end of the bargain? So until you show that you can and you make payments on time and you get to that 20%, there you're going to have to pay it. Then once you do, they remove it off of your mortgage payment.
That's right. Yeah. So PMI, private mortgage insurance.
Thank you.
You're self-insuring. You are paying your own way. So you've now made a decision. Let's unpack that just a little bit. We've now made a decision if we chose to enter into this agreement, Christine, on buying a house we can't afford and taking on a payment that's too big, paying interest now on that payment for 30 years. That's the typical schedule, right? They actually have mortgages now. I don't know if you know this. They go beyond 30 years, and so they'll lend you money for the rest of your life, effectively. And the interest on that money is going to be astronomical. If you run out the 30-year amortization on most current mortgages, you're going to have bought your home 4 times by the time you pay it off. So
Wow.
that's a little discouraging, right? And I'm painting a negative picture on purpose because this PMI, this private mortgage insurance, if we enter into that agreement, not only do all of those variables apply, but we, like you said, we're telling the mortgage company we can't probably afford this and we may default. And so now you're also going to pay another payment, and you're going to pay that to a private insurance company at a premium, so that when you default on this loan, any missed or due fees and payments would be covered by that insurance. Now, being covered by insurance makes it sound okay, and there are certainly insurances that we want to have, life insurance, health insurance. But this is not one of those insurances that's a good thing. This is one of those things that if you hear it during preparation, during shopping, and during getting qualified for a mortgage, if you hear this term, PMI, private mortgage insurance, or just the word insurance, walk away. Go find another option. You do not want to enter into that agreement. And if you're in a position, like Christine said, where you can't put that 10, 15, 20% down and avoid the PMI, everybody's got kind of a different threshold out there, then you aren't in a position. We're going to tell you you're not yet ready to make this purchase. And so definitely saving first. Where would you recommend, if we're going to save, Christine, what kind of account would you put that in?
A high yield savings account.
A high yield savings account. Okay. What does that
Yeah.
mean?
So a lot of online banks have something that's called a high yield savings account. The one that we bank with has a 5.25% interest rate, which is, well above what you're going to get at a local bank or credit union. Any kind of brick or mortar financial institution can't even compare to those rates. Other people may tell you to do other things, maybe put it in a CD, maybe invest it in the market and then take it out when you're ready to use it. But a high yield savings account is a great, safe way and a great place to start.
Yeah, no, I agree. And a lot of banks, if you're just dealing with a brick and mortar bank, their version of a high yield account might sound something like money market account, right? They're going to offer a savings account that's a little bit higher yield, but it will not. You're right. In today's market right now, high yield savings accounts are available, and we should take advantage of them. Now, will they be around forever? They're not going to be around forever. They're not sustainable. The market conditions keep changing. We said the real estate market is a function of that. So if you're, again, we told you that we're recording this November 1st of 2023. And so if you're looking now in the winter of 23, you do have the option for a high yield savings account. So you may as well take advantage of it while you can, because you will have, hopefully, a fairly significant amount of money in this account once you start saving or move over any money you've already saved into those accounts. And like you said, it's probably not at a brick and mortar bank. It's not going to be at your neighborhood bank around the corner. These are online accounts, and they are safe. They are FDIC insured, and they are offering through different strategies that they have. They are offering some higher yields because they're taking advantage of market conditions as well. So the fact that they can insure that money is great, and the fact that your value on the money increases is also great. So instead of paying the interest, they're now
You're
paying
earning it.
you the interest, and so that's always the
We
relationship we
like
want. And
that.
if you
We
think
like
about
that.
it, if it was going to cost you 5%, but you're now making 5%, it's not making 5%, you're making 10% because
Mhm.
the options on the table are cost yourself 5% or make yourself 5%. So the difference between the two is actually a 10% benefit.
Yeah,
Um,
that swing.
yes. Yeah.
So after you've saved or you start saving the money, another thing that you want to take a look at is your credit score. And I could tell you
Yes.
this from personal experience. When we bought our first house, doing that credit history, we found that there was an old medical bill for whatever reason, never got paid, and we had to pay it and get current on that before the financial institution would even lend us the money. So do some of that cleanup work, that prep work, researching your credit score ahead of time so you don't get to the closing table and now the brakes are put on and things are held up until you can clean up past bills.
Or you've gone through the prequal process and found out you don't qualify, or that you
Right.
qualify but it's at a higher rate. So don't
Yep.
don't put yourself. You're going to learn what you're going to learn. We talk about as we were kind of prepping for the show. I think I said control the controllables. Right.
Hmm.
There's things within our control, and this is one of those things. Right. We can look at our credit score. We can get a full report every year. There's free ways to do it. There's actually services now where you can pull it several times a year and look at it for free.
To that point, Donald, just before you go on, I like Credit
Yeah.
Karma. I get emails
Okay.
from them monthly. It's great. I can check out my credit score. I can see if has been anything opened.
Yep.
I like it.
We use Rocket Money, and we have a mortgage with Rocket Mortgage, and so it's an extension of that platform. And yeah, just like you said, check it and look for those open accounts because there's probably some old open accounts. You may or may not have an expired payment, but it's still reporting on your credit history,
Mhm.
and so you want to clean all that up. And then I think the other thing we definitely need to mention is that if you have a low credit score, and that is going to have a significant impact on your ability to borrow the money at a competitive rate, then again, we're in a place, and you're going to hear me say this a lot, so just get ready for it, but you're in a place where you're not ready to buy this home, right? You don't want to enter into an agreement that's going to put negative pressure on you financially. And so we really want to minimize and limit those, limit the possibility for that happening. Our goal is to help. Our goal is to serve. And the message that we're sending
Absolutely.
today is not that you can't do this. It's that you can and you should. And we want you to become a homeowner as soon as possible. We do not want you to rush into this biggest financial decision of your entire life and make a mistake. Mistakes are inevitable. It's going to happen. We get it. But again, let's control the controllables. So check your credit report and get your credit score as high as possible. That does not mean go open 24 credit cards and start using them. That is not how we build a good credit score. You probably have some credit history already, and so you can lean into your existing credit history. You can clean up past debts, and you can get yourself in a better position. You do not need to go open new accounts today. If you have questions about that, call one of us. Call somebody you
Please,
trust.
please.
Get some help and have the conversation. Don't just go down to your bank and say, I want to improve my credit score. What credit products do you have? Or go online. Now, how quickly do you think, how long would it take? Minutes, I think, Christine, to open up 10 new credit card accounts.
Oh,
Uh,
seconds, really.
Seconds. Yeah. Yeah. You get online.
I
How
mean,
fast could
it's,
you do
yeah.
that?
Mhm.
So that is not what we want to do. And I would tell you that it would have the negative, it would have an inverse effect,
It
not the
absolutely
impact
will.
you think it would have, right? So you think, I'm going to go open new credit. I'm going to start using the credit. I'm going to pay the bills and I'm going to improve my credit score. And then you go try to qualify for a mortgage. And the first thing that shows up is that you've opened 10 new accounts in a relatively short amount of time. This is not going to be good for you. And so
Mhm.
that, we want to kind of take away any illusions that it can happen fast and that this is, an option or the best path forward. So if your credit score is bad, fix it first. Fix it
Yep.
slowly, fix it intentionally.
And my mom, something she has said to me my entire life is when I've been frustrated about the pace of things, everything is a matter of timing. And I
Mhm.
could hear her every time something is not going at the pace I want it to go. She pops into my head, everything is a matter of timing. And you may be so excited and so ready to buy your first home, second home, whatever home it may be for you. But everything truly is a matter of timing. And you want to have that solid financial foundation before you enter into home ownership because there are so many costs that come with being a homeowner.
That's
If
right.
you are not prepared for them, you're just going to take so many steps backwards. And if you are prepared and are qualified, the next step on our list is to get pre-qualified with
That's
a
right.
lending institution. It's going to be that much sweeter. Home ownership is going to be that much sweeter. You're always going to have something that breaks, something that has to be repaired. If you're, in a neighborhood, maybe it's a neighbor you don't like, but Donald said earlier, control the controllables. And your steps, your actions that you take in this process are the controllables. So don't
That's
rush
right.
them. Everything
Yep.
is a matter of timing. And then start going to have fun
Then
and
have
start
fun.
looking
Yeah.
at open houses. Like when we bought our first house, literally, legit, I'm not making this up. We looked at 50. Our
Wow.
first home was the 50th home we looked at, and we had made offers on several. But because we know our high end, what we were not going to spend over, we were trying to get a deal. We were trying to see where we could save some, not necessarily
Absolutely.
save money, but we were just trying to get as much house for as little money as we could in a neighborhood that we wanted to be in.
Mhm.
And we made some offers. We did some counter offering, and it was okay. Every time that those offers didn't go through, we learned more. We just got further educated by seeing 50 homes that when we got to the 50th, we absolutely knew, one, it was in our price range, but two, we did not want to let this one go. And we bid right at the top of our price range, but
Mhm.
it was affordable for us. It was within that price range. And we got the home and we were extremely happy there for 8 years. And I look back and I look at that journey of 50 homes, of viewing them, and some of them were fixer uppers. And I am
Sure.
so glad we didn't land on one of those, because while yes, it would have taken extra time and money to get them where they were, it would have also been just, I think, more friction between my husband and I of the actual act of doing the projects. Are we hiring? Are we doing them on our
Mhm.
own? He traveled for work, occasionally at that time. So how are we fitting this into our life? I mean, there was one home that I fell in love with that we actually had a contractor come out and look at, and, what was it going to be to renovate the home? And I'm so glad that we bought a turnkey home. We
Mhm.
enjoyed it for 8 years, but we had fun in the process. We didn't overextend ourselves. All in a way to say we set ourselves up for success with that first home.
And it sounds to me like what I heard you say loud and clear is that you guys moved slow. You moved intentionally. You slowed down. 50
We did.
homes. How many people can say that? And for you guys, this was a first time home buyer situation, right?
Yep.
So this was the
Yep.
first home. You looked at 50 homes. I will tell you, our story is very different. By the fourth home, the first home I bought before I was married, we moved into that home after being married, and then we bought the next home online. We got
Mm.
transferred, and so we were separated at the time because the new job was in Arkansas. I was still working in my business in Virginia, and so I was living in and selling our current home, and then she was working and living out of a hotel in the new location. And I did not have the ability to fly out there and do any research, right? And so I started finding houses online. We got a realtor that could go do virtual walkthroughs for me and send me videos and pictures. She went out and visited a couple. And so we just, we clicked a button, and we did buy one that was actually in a distressed condition because it had been discovered that there was mold. Water had come in through the
Mm.
roof. Now, at the time, I was a home builder, and so that didn't scare me. I figured I could partner up with a few local trades, and we could get that taken care of pretty easily. So that's my story, but that's not going to be everybody's story, and so I don't want to recommend that, because while it didn't make me nervous, that could have been, for what you described, could have been a deal breaker, right? You went into
Yeah.
this
Yep.
home that needed a little bit of work, and you said, yes, it needs work. Yes, maybe we could afford it, but do we really want to live this way? And then you could only control the controllables. What if you do the project and it doesn't turn out the way you expected? Now what?
Right.
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 So you may or may not have a risk tolerance for that. And I think knowing what your risk tolerance is critical. You really want to know kind of where you are individually and as a couple if you're doing this together. So, but yes, we wrote down in our notes, Christine, that we want you guys to study your local housing market, and I think your experience speaks to that.
We
50
we did it.
houses you studied. My goodness, you
we
do
we
everything.
we did a lot of that on open house Sundays. So we would
Yeah,
go see, 2 to 4, depending on the Sunday. So, you get to 50 pretty quick, but truly, I mean, it was an education, and it
yeah,
really was. And it was also eye opening. I had no idea that people did not keep their homes updated. We went into one
sure.
home that had shag carpet and panel, uh, paneling on their walls
Let's
to
go.
match the
Sign me
shag
up.
carpet. So like
Does
one
it still have
room
it? I
was
want to buy
blue,
it.
one I don't know. That's a lot of years ago now. This was but anyways, the point being, like, to walk into a home and see a blue room with blue shag carpeting and blue paneling, a red room
Right.
with red shag carpeting and red. I mean, it is like, oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
you have to have a vision and you have to have
Yes.
the desire, and people do for sure, who can see beyond that, who want to take on that project. But it was a huge education. I learned so much even about a homeowner being home during a showing,
Sure.
and that was a bit of an awkward situation.
Little different.
So,
Yep.
so you learn a lot. So doing all of this due diligence, not only with the home, but also with the neighborhood and the school district, and the proximity to where you work or the life that you live. You have to take it all into account. And taxes,
Absolutely.
property taxes are very different all around the country. Here in New York State, our property taxes are pretty high. If you're buying an older home versus a newer home, you're going to see differences there. So, and then home owners insurance, right?
Yes.
So you're going to
Yes.
want
So
to
this is the good
research
insurance.
that.
We want this
Yes.
insurance. Yep.
Yes, exactly. You want to have a homeowner's insurance, but you want to research that ahead of time. And are you going to pay for that outright every year, or are you going to escrow that into your home? So I jumped ahead, but
No, but
going
these
back
are
to
all
doing.
good. And it occurs to me as we're talking, this isn't just for the home buyer. This is for the home seller too. Right? We're talking about it from the perspective through the lens of the buyer, and this is all very relevant to people who are purchasing. But if you own a home and you're selling, and maybe you're purchasing a new home, increasing, right, going up in house, or maybe you're scaling down, this could all be relevant because you talked about the homeowner being home during an open house. That creates a certain dynamic, and I know a lot of realtors would advise against that. But in some situations, there may actually be value there. So you really want to do your homework, right? We're not saying any one of these things is the right way to do it. What we're saying is know what your drivers are, right? Understand the competition, the market that you're in. And then have very, very clear, and I'm just going to reiterate the goals piece. So like have very, very clear goals. Maybe you need to go out.
I was going to do it if you didn't, so I'm glad you're bringing
you
it
have
up.
to, right? So maybe you don't go out and visit 50 houses like Christine did, but try to do at least 10. I mean, have more than one showing. I was going to share earlier that by the time we got to our fourth house, we saw it one time. It was one house, and we made an offer that afternoon, and so it got very, very fast. But this was a home that we had seen in our area. We had lived there for 7 years before we made an offer on the house and moved into the house that we're in now. We knew this house existed. We had driven by it many, many times. We kind of knew the condition of the house. We did not know the owners of the home. And the home was never for sale, but my wife had made a comment, if this house ever comes up for sale, this is the house, right? And wouldn't you know it, when we decided to go out and search, there's a for sale sign in the front yard. So the house was not for sale very long. But it was that was a decision 6 years in the making, right? We knew location, home size, neighborhood, school zone, insurance. We had lived here for a while now. We understand the area. We know we want to stay. We have control over our careers now, and so we don't have to move. We're not going to be relocated. We have more controllables now than we had when we were getting started. And that's something that I think is worth thinking about. As you live your life, as you work in your career, as you make decisions about where you're going, the older you get and the more time you spend being intentional, the more controllables you have. There's still uncontrollables. You'll never get them all. But now we can confidently say that our employers, I am my employer and my wife works for a company, but it's a remote job, no longer dictate where we live. And I think a lot of people live in that reality now. And so we did not start our journey that way. We started our journey working for employers that when they asked you to relocate, you packed up your stuff and you found a new home and you moved. And we don't live that reality now. So some people do and some people don't, and both are okay. But just know where you are and what's important, and try to satisfy those needs first before you start satisfying the wants, for sure.
And the more times you buy a home, as you can relate to, you've bought 6 over the course of your lifetime.
You do get better at it. But I won't say that this is not one of those things you want to get good at and start turning over a lot of volume, unless that's your plan. If that's your goal, if that's your plan, if that's what drives you, if this is part of your financial picture and your goals, then go for it and get good at it. But if you're looking for that long-term, forever home, then this is not one of those things you want to get good at and do a bunch of times. You want to get it right the first time if you can. So then, yes, you were going to launch into the next section here, which is we're going to take action, right?
That's the exciting part, right? You've done all this lead up work.
Now we're ready.
Now we can make that first offer.
Yep. And hopefully it's accepted, but if it isn't, that's okay too, right?
So it's okay to negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to go back and forth, right? You're not, just because you're making that first offer doesn't mean it's going to be accepted, and don't take it personally if it's not. It's obviously a very personal, or it can be a very personal decision for the person selling the home, whether it's a home they've lived in or if they're selling it for, maybe they inherited it from a family member and now they're selling it. There can be a lot of emotions tied for the seller as well. So if they're countering, don't take it personally. Also,
and there could be a lot of pressure, right? If it's a family transaction, buyer to seller or seller to buyer, there could be that emotional response. There could be that feeling of pressure to accept a price or to take an action on, purchasing or selling a home that you're not sure you want to take that action on. So, avoid those scenarios if you can, but just be aware that they exist. And that would be maybe in the category of controllables, but it might be in the category of out of your control too. And so just, try to figure out where that is and respond accordingly. I heard you say, that emotional response. When you get to the point of taking action, it's okay to have emotional responses during showings and stuff like that. But once you decide to take this step, and now it's a transaction, and now money is going to exchange hands, all the emotion has to go away. You're in business mode now, right? We're negotiating. I know what I'm willing to take. I know what I'm willing to offer, and that's okay, right? It's not about making friends. It's not about hurting feelings. It's just, these are my boundaries, and they're healthy boundaries. And we're gonna encourage you to stick to your boundaries and to make sure that you negotiate correctly.
And something your realtor will educate you on, but you may not know just sitting here listening to this episode today, is when you go to that offer table, you're actually bringing money with you. It's called earnest money. And I haven't bought a home and I just said 12 years, so I don't know if the recommendations have changed, but back at that time, it was like a minimum $1,000. You're showing good faith that if this deal goes, or you want this deal to go through, and here you go. Here's some money that you have to bring to the table.
And nowadays, that pre-qualification is really what's driving a lot of that, right? So pre-qualifying getting qualified is a little different than it used to be. It used to be, hey, this person is a good risk. Now it's much more specific than that. You actually are coming to the table when you get pre-qualified with most lenders with the equivalent of a cash offer. And so it's a very different landscape right now. Getting that pre-qualification and having an amount already confirmed and available to you is very powerful in today's market. So it's considered the same as a cash offer. Now, what you want to do, make sure that you structure it appropriately. Make sure that there's consideration for the down payment. Make sure there's consideration for the earnest money. Make sure there's consideration for things like inspections and other things. We haven't mentioned it in detail, but do your diligence. Christine talked about the 50 houses they went into. By the time they got around to making an offer and doing diligence and investigating and getting reports back from engineers about the condition of the home and things of that nature, depending on the age of the home, that report could look wildly different. And so be ready to back out of a deal if the report comes back. The seller is telling you the house is in good shape, but you get an engineer saying this house is about to fall down. It's got termites or something like that. Don't feel like you have to find a way to make the deal work. It's okay to walk away when you find something out that you weren't prepared for.
You can always renegotiate too.
And renegotiate, it could change the value of the home. Absolutely. Yeah. So now if the value of the home is changing, you have to be prepared to address that and adjust.
And that's next on our list to talk about is the home inspection. There will be a lot of people who waive that from their offer. And it's truly a personal decision. You don't have to have a home inspection to buy a home, but I personally would highly recommend against that because you just don't know what you're buying. And that home inspector truly inspects every inch of the inside and the outside of the home. And they bring to you any red flags, any concerns that they see. And sometimes they're just very small, minor issues with the home that, of course, you're not going to, lose the deal because of it. But you definitely want to be made aware of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's talk about market conditions because that usually drives home inspections. So
Mhm.
in a fast-paced market, you're going to see listings that actually say they won't accept a home inspection because the market is moving too fast. We're going to get a buyer whether you buy our house or not. And so one response to that would be, all right, well, if I want to buy a home, then I'm just going to have to buy a home without a home inspection. And what Christine and I are saying is you don't want to do that. You don't want to let those kinds of pressures influence your decision. Now, you may be in some extreme scenarios, you may have to concede. Like there certainly could be an example of somebody in a situation that has to get into a home and there's just no way around it. And so if that's you, then okay, right? You have to do what you have to do. But if you have the choice, and I'm going to argue that you almost always have the choice, get the home inspection because you want to make an informed decision. What good is all of this due diligence if you end up with a lemon and now you bought the house at a good price, but it's going to cost you 5 times the value to fix it and live in it in a healthy way because of something, because of mold, because of poor construction, because of poor ownership and maintenance, because of a gas leak, because of radon poisoning. I mean, you name it. There's so many things out there that the home inspector is going to check for, and he's going to make sure that everything is as it should be. Now, that doesn't mean that it's, an elite property. It just means that it's safe and that it's built to code and that it passes all of the inspector's tests for being a sound home that is being presented in an appropriate way, right? Meaning,
Mhm.
if somebody is selling a car as is where is, right? You guys have seen those ads. You go to buy a used car and they're telling you there's no warranty. I have no idea the condition of the car. Maybe I bought the car used and I just don't want it anymore. And so there's not, or the dealerships have the as is label on the cars, right? We've all seen them. That means you're not negotiating on price and that there's no warranty. And if it doesn't even drive off the lot, that you're responsible for towing it home. That is not how you want to buy a house. We don't want that to happen to you. So get the home inspection. And
Well
then you
said.
already mentioned it, but homeowners insurance, right? We want to get
Yes.
insurance as well.
Yep. Yep. And then, I'll just repeat what I said. You get to choose, am I putting this homeowner's insurance in the escrow, meaning I'm paying my mortgage payment, I'm paying my taxes, and I'm also paying my home insurance with one payment to the lender every month? Or do I want to keep that out and maybe I have it bundled with my auto insurance and I would just rather make one payment a month to the insurance company and one payment a month to the mortgage lender? It's up to you
A-
to choose.
Absolutely. And I would say we're not going to have a preference here. Do
No.
whatever's comfortable for you. It's as long as the only qualifier I'll put on is if there's any kind of a financing charge or a processing charge or an
Mm.
administrative charge or a fee associated with putting in an escrow, then you don't want to take advantage because it's no longer a benefit to you or a value to you. But if those fees are all waived or non-existent by your lender, then escrow is very common. It's very normal. It's how most taxes and insurance are paid, and it's how most monthly mortgage payments are calculated. So, as you're calculating your mortgage payment and you're doing the first step of understanding your finances and how much you can spend, just make sure you factor those in. So, know
Mhm.
how much you can spend on the principal and the interest of the loan, including your insurance payment and your tax payment,
Mhm.
which are going to be paid every 6 months or annually by your mortgage lender if you go with the escrow option. But you could reserve those and save them yourself in a high yield savings account, earn a little bit on them, and then pay them once a year yourself. The choice is yours either way.
And you'll do it when you own your home outright. So if you're buying cash for a home, then you're going to be
Eventually,
responsible
one
for
day. Yep.
your own insurance and your own taxes. The other thing you may have to consider in your calculations, which I've never had to, I've never lived in in the area that we needed to pay for it, but a homeowners association fee.
Hmm.
Some developments that you buy a home in, even though you own the home, there is a fee to live in the development, which comes with different perks and responsibilities. So make sure if you're buying a home with that fee that you can also afford that too. You never want to get in over your head when it
That's right.
comes
No
to
surprises.
owning a home.
Yeah, and I'll say down here in the South, that's very common. We've lived in 2 neighborhoods here in Georgia, and both have had HOA fees. They've both been very reasonable, less than $1,000 a year, because we have large developments, and so everybody pays their portion. And what that goes toward is as Christine said, there's certain perks and benefits to those ownership fees. But there's also rules. There's restrictions on what can happen in your neighborhood. There's security that comes with that. There's updates that go with that, maintenance, road work. landscape, pools, tennis courts, things of that nature. And then in our community, it happens to be a lake community, and there's a certain amount of cost that goes with maintaining a lake. And so we all pay a portion of that fee to maintain our lake. And, that's something that if you were to own a large enough property and have your own lake, you would be responsible for 100% yourself. And maybe some of you out there are going to be able to do that. And I commend you for that, because that would be amazing. But lake ownership is expensive. And so sharing that fee actually makes something that you couldn't afford on your own attainable to a lot of people. And you get to live in a neighborhood if you want that social opportunity that you might not get out on a big property in the country that was big enough to have a lake on your own. But if that was your preference and you wanted that isolation, then that's obviously is on your list when you're out there looking for property and shopping. So be aware of all those things.
So many choices when it comes to owning a home. All right, so your offer's been accepted. You're moving through with the process. And now you come to the closing and bring your, how do I want to say this? Your John Hancock ready, because you will sign a lot of documents.
I was going to say wrist brace. You bring a wrist brace. And it might be this is no fun. It's exciting, but yes, if you've never done it before, I don't know, Christine, 100 signatures per person?
A lot. And in New York State, we are required to have an attorney review our documents and be part of the closing process.
Same here in Georgia.
And so, they have their own documents, and the bank has their own documents.
So
and
you've got a stack of documents.
Their own documents.
You've got owner, you've got seller, you've got buyer, you've got realtor, you've got attorney, and everybody's passing paper around the table, and everybody's just signing. Yep.
Yes, a lot. And so make sure you have what you need, right? You don't need drama that day by leaving your driver's license at home, right? Whatever you may need for these closing documents, make sure you bring them with you. Make sure you have your down payment with you, any other payments for your attorney or whatever other fees you have to bring that day. Have all of your ducks in a row, your I's dotted, your T's crossed. So when you show up for this meeting, you're relaxed, you're calm, because it's a big purchase, right? There's emotions that are involved. There could be a little anxiety that's involved. There could be a lot of different things running through your head. Be prepared for going into the closing meeting.
And I would just add, put it on your calendar, and beyond just being prepared, with making sure you have your ID and those things, make sure you've allowed enough time on your calendar that you don't have distractions, that you're not having to run out of a meeting last minute from work and then you get caught in traffic. I'm speaking from experience here. I had one scheduled during the day. We had a busy day at the job that I was at that time. They called some last minute meetings. We had an emergency situation happen that I was involved in. And so I was dealing with that and trying to figure out how I was going to make it to the closing on time. I actually called and let them know that I was on my way, but I thought I might be late. It was not the best situation. And so had I just taken that day off, right? Just take the day off, have the whole day. That way you can get through the closing. You don't have distractions. You don't have the stress. And then when it's over, go to your new property. Right?
You get to celebrate.
Don't take the truck. Don't schedule the truck for that afternoon and start trying to move in or anything like that. My wife and I, when we moved to Arkansas, we went to the closing, and we went to the house, and it was in bad shape. Like I said, it was a distressed property. We had a little bit of work to do to clean up, but we just ordered pizza, and we sat on the floor and we ate pizza, and I think we had Diet Coke in our new home, right? And we just that was our celebration. It doesn't have to be anything extreme, but it was calm, and we enjoyed it, and we made a memory of it. And I definitely take the stresses away. Have your ID, have all the things you need, all the practical things, but definitely have enough time to get through the process without being distracted, pulled away, or having to reschedule. That happens sometimes. I've had to sit down at a closing table where I was the buyer, the seller didn't show up. So this is a non-controllable, right? I controlled my side of the table, but the seller didn't show up. They had to reschedule. So it pushed it a whole week, and that changed everything for me, and so, I mean, those things happen, but just if you can avoid it, try to avoid the stressful situation. So now you're a homeowner.
Yeah, you're a homeowner. You did your final walkthrough. You went through the closing procedures. I'm going to say one tip if you're the seller in this process, something that I think is a really nice touch. What if you leave a new home card and maybe a bottle of champagne or something behind for the buyer when they get to go in for the first time as the new homeowner?
I love it.
That's just a little tip.
Yeah, I've done construction projects in the past for those kinds of like updates and renos, preparing a home for sale. And we would typically actually hide something in the wall so that if somebody ends up doing a renovation down the road, they'll find it,
That's funny because when we were building our home, so like I mentioned, I've owned 2 homes, one we bought, one we built, but it was a turnkey mortgage, so that it was a little bit different. So it was basically like we were getting a regular mortgage, not a construction loan to build the
Gotcha.
home, but we
Yep.
were very involved in the entire process. It was our plans, everything.
Awesome.
So one day we come to our house that's being built, and the walls had been framed, but no sheetrock yet. And there's $1 hanging in what is now our pantry wall. And we asked everybody, like, who put that? Like, is it a superstition? Was it a neighbor? Was it a contractor? Was it a family member? To this day, we have no idea who
You
put
don't
the
know.
dollar there, but
That's
it's
funny.
there. And if anyone
Yep.
ever demos it, they're going to find it. And I kind of forgot about that story until, we're just
Yep.
what you just said. So at the end of the day, after all of this, we still want you to maintain financial responsibility now
Yes.
as a new homeowner, because you are going to incur costs that just come with the territory of owning the home. And I'm not even talking about whether it's lawn care or driveway care in the winter, having someone plow your driveway for you. There will always be something that you need to stay on top of. So you're being proactive with your home instead of reactive with your home. You don't ever want to ignore a problem that eventually leads to becoming a huge financial burden if you just stay on top of things along the way.
No doubt. So I think we've that's everything we wanted to cover. But I will say, just in closing, and we've got a couple more things to sort of leave you guys with. But before we leave, maybe 2 quick thoughts. One is, if all we did today was just cause you to slow down and just take stock of where you are in this process, whether you're buying or selling or thinking about buying or selling. Just slow down, maybe run back through the list and the show notes of everything that we talked about today, and just make sure that you've touched each one of these areas, that you've given it the proper amount of consideration. And if we can say that we slowed you down on any one of these steps and caused you to, either make an adjustment or confirm that everything that you're doing is correct, then we feel like we've done our job. And then the second part of that is that there's no way that we can cover everything and every scenario and every detail about everybody's situation when it comes to home ownership, buying or selling. And as we said, the conditions of the market change. What we believe, though, is that these are 5, 6, 7 things that everybody, no matter what the market looks like, should consider. And just make sure that if you're walking down through these 7 things and you're giving them proper consideration, that you're going to find the right outcome for you at your point in time, whatever that is that you're buying or selling your home for your situation. And all of those situations are going to be different. So, that's a little bit of a disclaimer, but at the same time, it should be encouragement, because what we hope is that you won't go into this feeling overwhelmed and feeling discouraged, but rather energized and excited and prepared. And that entering into home ownership will be the blessing that you want it and intend for it to be in your life, as opposed to a burden. And that really, at the end of the day, is all we could hope for.
And to me, home is really where the heart is. So, yes, we often think of it, it's the structure, it's the neighborhood, it's the city, the state, wherever we're living, but home is where the heart is. So I hope that your heart finds a home that is very content. And if you're out there and you're about to buy a home for the first time or the 7th time, our call to action to you today is, we want to hear from you. Yeah. We want to hear what's going well, what you're struggling with. And if we can help you make a well-informed decision, then Donald and I want to help you.
Absolutely. I second that. And I'd just be repeating it if I tried to add anything to it. So I'll leave it there.
Share the quote then.
I was going to jump forward to the quote. Yeah. So our quote today is by Warren Buffett. And so if you don't know who Warren Buffett is, I don't know where you've been, but if he's an easy one to Google, so put that name in and you'll find out who he is real fast. But his quote for today's show is that we don't have to be smarter than the rest. We have to be more disciplined than the rest. So you don't need a higher education. If you have a higher education or you're smarter than somebody else, on paper, that doesn't mean that you're more prepared or better able to move through this process. If, by contrast, you are just more willing to follow a process, and you don't lean on education and book knowledge to take you through something like this, you might actually turn out better. Pretty good quote for today, I think. Discipline. We say, financial freedom all the time. I read a book to my son last year, and they had a quote in there that I think I've shared on this show. I know I've shared it on the other podcast, but it's discipline equals freedom. And so we talk about financial freedom. Well, discipline equals freedom. So follow the steps and you'll have a much better experience. And you'll be on your way to financial freedom as well, because this is part of the process of becoming financially free, is buying your home and buying it well. So we also have book recommendations. What's our book recommendation for today?
We've recommended it before, but it's such a good one, and we think it holds a lot of value for this episode today, and it's Atomic Habits by James Clear. Yeah. So if it's still on your list, please, we encourage you to go out and read it.
And if you've already read it, read it again, because this is one that you'll pick up new tidbits from every single time that you read it. So buy your house, buy it well. Remember what we said. If we knew then what we know now, we would make a lot of changes. And I shared that, my first experience to my last experience, vastly different. And you heard Christine talk about all the diligence, I'll call it diligence, that they put into that first, or discipline. I'm going to use the word discipline because that fits the quote better. So the discipline of going through so many, you could maybe throw indecision maybe in there as well, Christine. I don't know, but we'll call it discipline. We'll call it discipline.
I'm thinking diligence and discipline.
Okay, we'll stick with those. But yeah, 50 homes, right? So go out and just start. Even if you're not ready to buy or sell, go visit a few open houses. Just kind of get a sense of what the market looks like for you at this point in time, and then start to make your decision. Treat it as some homework to maybe, if you're considering this, find out if now is the right time. If you have the ability to wait and slow down and be a little bit more intentional, maybe waiting is a good thing in your situation. Or maybe it's the right time to move, but starting to get information is going to be how you're going to be able to make that decision more informed. So we'll leave you with that. Christine, any final thoughts?
Enjoy the process, and we wish you well in your home search adventures.
Perfect. I love it. Well, we'll see you next time on Off Limits. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Off Limits.
Beyond the podcast, we are money coaches who want to help you.
So if you are looking for help managing your money, use the links in the description below to contact either of us and learn how coaching can help you thrive.
Lastly, please help us to spread the word by subscribing, leaving a comment, and sharing our podcast with your friends and family.